You know, I'm an anarchist, so for me, that means not telling people what they have to do. I think it's really your call. You know, you have to make a judgment call. How much do you want to vote no against the system as a whole in any given instance, or how much do you want to intervene in a system you know to be corrupt and dysfunctional just to create some worse form of damage? I mean, most people who vote to create against somebody more than they vote for. Um, I myself don't vote. In this case, I can't anyway because I'm not actually a citizen. But I've rarely seen the point of doing so in America. Partly because I'm from New York, which is like, you know, in America, half the people don't make any difference for the presidential election anyway, because they're either in red states or blue states. So it's easy for me to rationalize not voting. So I haven't voted, but I'm not going to tell people not to. In fact, I think that often it can be a perfectly legitimate call.
What difference does it make if we get Labour or Tory?
At this moment, it makes a lot of difference, I am afraid to say, because, you know, when people talked about Brexit, they talked about it in the abstract. Look, I hate the bureaucrats as much as anybody, but the immediate effect of having a Brexit under current existing circumstance is giving the Tory party carte blanche to rewrite the economic and social structure of the country. That would be a disaster.
How can our viewers help get rid of Theresa May?
Well, I think that, like, anything you can do to spread the word is good. I mean, the thing about Theresa May is she's kind of a terrible candidate. She's a very unlikable person. She's basically a robot. She can't interact with anybody. This is why she's terrified to actually, you know, debate anyone. She misdoes the cues. She can read a speech quite well. So I would say urge people, you know, show up in a chicken suit every time she shows up anywhere and like shame her into actually debating people about issues. As soon as people are exposed to who she is, I think her vote will collapse.
Fantastic. You've written a book about bureaucracy. Sometimes people talk about bureaucracy as being red tape, and there were arguments that Brexit was about deregulation.
Yeah, we'll see how that turns out, right?
Explain.
Okay, I've actually coined a phrase. I realize one reason my works haven't been more popular than they are is I don't make up catchy phrases. So I come up with one. The iron law of liberalism. The iron law of liberalism, this is in the old-fashioned sense of liberalism, is that any legislation which is meant to deregulate, to get rid of red tape, to like open up market forces so as to get rid of bureaucracy, will in fact have the effect of creating more regulations, more paperwork, and more total number of bureaucrats than existed before. I believe that there is no historical case where that didn't happen. My favorite example is Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. In the 10 years between, I think it was 1991 or 2 and 2002, the total number of bureaucrats went up by 25%. So if after the Soviet Union they still end up with more bureaucrats during shock therapy. I mean, the economy was like 30% smaller, yet the number of bureaucrats was 25% bigger.
What do you think happened to unemployment? Do you think that went up, but the bureaucrats went up too?
Yeah, I think it did. And I think a lot of those bureaucrats were people who would otherwise have been unemployed or being kept off the streets. But, you know, the private bureaucracy grew too. That's the thing. So the 25% is the number of civil servants. You know, since all this stuff was privatized, a lot of those bureaucrats were still there doing the same thing, except they were, in theory, not bureaucrats anymore. But the total number of in the public sector still went up. So God knows how many more bureaucrats there really were under capitalism than there were under state socialism.